What's up, everyone? Welcome to the MMA Breakdown, where we're going to discuss UFC 40. We're going to dive right into this card. I'm going to give you the best props, angles, and my predictions for this upcoming fight card. We're doing fairly well lately, cashing in parlays on my last four events, and getting 4 to 5 right on the Dana White Contender Series this past Tuesday, cashing in on a 3-leg parlay. Follow this podcast, you'll be able to follow all my predictions going forward. I'll have that posted in the link below. So let's dive right into this. In the first fight, we have Ariana Carolesi versus Estelle Nunez, which I apologize. Probably just butchered her name. This is a super fun fight to kick off this card. You have Estelle Nunez, who is fighting in one championship. She wasn't overly active there. One championship hasn't been active really during this pandemic. And as far as I know, she was able to get out of her contract in order to make her UFC debut. She's a fairly good striker, has good hands, has good kicks. Although she's going up against a complete warrior in Ariana Carolesi. This girl is built like a Mack truck. She's got muscles from head to toe. She's got good wrestling, good punching, good kicks. She's a very active fighter. In this fight, I see Ariana Carolesi dominating most of the fight. I don't think Nunez will be able to match her pressure. If you've watched any of her previous fights, she just goes. She made her UFC debut against Angela Hill, where she lost due to doctor stoppage. But for the time period that fight went on, it was fairly competitive. In her last fight against Ni Liang, she was able to win by ground and pound and looked like an absolute world beater in this fight. I think this is Ariana Carolesi's fight to lose, and what I mean by that is if she decides to pull her foot off the gas a little bit and let Nunez take over, then it will definitely be a little bit of a turn of fate. It might be a good live betting opportunity here if you're interested in that. Just because, with Carolesi being the favorite right now, you may be able to jump in right on her. If she loses the first round, you might be able to get better value on her actually coming back and finishing this. She may start off slow, may have trouble dealing with Nunez a little bit, but my pick for this fight is Ariana Carolesi. Move on into the next one. In the next fight, we have Brandon Davis versus Diana Bagatelle. And this is where my first dog of the night is going to be. I like Brandon Davis a lot in this spot. If you look at the lines, you'll be able to see that money's been coming in late on him. I think he opened up at almost a plus 200. And last time I checked, he's actually currently sitting at plus 150. So there's definitely some people seeing what I'm seeing. There's some late money coming in. So let me explain to you why I have this opinion on this fight. Brandon Davis has fought an extreme strength of competition. If you look at him prior to getting cut from the UFC, he fought Zabit Magomedov, which I cannot say that guy's name for the life of me. Lost due to knee bar. He fought Randy Costa, who we just saw go to absolute war with Adrian Nunez not that long ago. He won that fight by rear naked choke. And then he fought King Rong Hong Zhang, who is currently retired. And then he fought Giga Kitsache, who right now is top 5. Just got announced for a fight with Calvin Kattar. And it looks like he may be fighting for a championship fairly soon. After that loss to Giga, he got cut from the promotion, went on a 4-fight win streak on the regional stream, and has now come back to fight Diana Bagatelle. I'm not very good at names if you haven't noticed. The reason why I'm also so high in this spot is because as much as we all see Bagatelle like these amazing hands and crisp punches, he's not facing the highest level of competition. And what I mean by that is his last win was over Kevin Naderat, who is 9-2. But once again, I'm guessing most people here haven't actually heard of that guy's name. Prior to that, he won against Guido Canelli. Once again, not the most skilled fighter, let's say. The guy's 8-4. And then prior to that, he lost to Haile Elatang, who was really able to just use his wrestling and dominate that fight. And whenever we saw Haile go to his wrestling, we saw that there was a big weakness in Bagatelle's defense there. If you're familiar with Davis, he's not the cleanest striker. He's kind of sloppy, but he's in your face. He'll shoot for takedowns, and the guy's just ready to go for war. And at plus money, I'm willing to take a little bit of a stab at this one. All right, move into the next one. In the third fight of the evening, we have third fight of the evening, we have Ludovic Klein versus Nate Landwehr. Now, this fight, I think the line reflects what I'm pretty much going to say. Nate Landwehr is probably going to get knocked out. If you look at a fight and you look at the betting odds and the prop line for a KO is at minus money, you know that the bookies are looking at exactly what we're looking at. They're looking for somebody to go to sleep, and unfortunately, that's going to be Nate Landwehr. We all had a lot of hype on Nate Landwehr whenever he came in the UFC, at least I did. I thought he was going to do great things. He came over from a good promotion, but he was the M1 world champion, but he just never really like came back. Even in his fight against Darren Elkins, I know he won a unanimous decision, but that makes it sound like that fight wasn't competitive. And I think a lot of the reason why Darren Elkins ended up losing that fight is because he was covered in blood. And I think the judges look at these types of things, but Darren Elkins was highly competitive in that fight. Nate Landwehr lost to Herbert Burns in his UFC debut. As said, he had a win over Elkins. And then he also lost to Julian Erosa by a flying knee, where we all know Julian Erosa has been chin-checked multiple times before. So now if you look at Ludovic Klein, the guy's got phenomenal striking. I think he's one of these guys that can go very far in the division. This is only going to be his third fight in the UFC. He made his debut where he beat Shane Young with a head kick. He lost to Mike Trezano in a fight where he just seemed like he couldn't really pull the trigger and kind of decided that he wanted to become a wrestler, which he doesn't need to do that in this fight. Nate Landwehr is going to go there. His hands are going to be down, and he's going to get chin checked again. I'm expecting a first round KO in this fight from Ludovic Klein, and I'm excited to see what this guy can do. If you're looking for a parlay, Ludovic Klein is definitely should be one of the legs in your parlay this weekend. All right, let's move on into the next fight. If you guys are interested in props, anything like that, post them in the comments below. I'd love to give you guys different angles and stuff like that, but until this channel really gets off the ground, I'm just going to run through these types of things. I'll post my picks in the comments below. So, in the next fight, we have Lupita Godinez, who fought last weekend, going up against Luna Caroline. Now, this is a little bit of an interesting fight, but to be honest, not a lot has changed. If you look at Luna's original fight, she was supposed to fight Sijara Eubanks, who kind of has a pretty similar style to Lupita. She likes to come in, use her punches, but she wants to be on the ground. Sijara Eubanks is a black belt, and that's where she feels more comfortable. Now, if you look at Lupita, in her last fight, man, like she came in, and I'll be the first to admit, I bet against her. I did not have much faith, but she came in and she proved me wrong. Now, I should say, this was like a little $3 sprinkle. I saw the line. I liked what I saw on the minimal tape I can find on her opponent. Wasn't a great idea. We all lose little $3 sprinkles here and there. Happens to the best of us. Where you find those spots. Back to the point here. With Lupita Godinez, she's probably going to be able to come in here, take the one down, and do exactly what she did. Now, I'm going to point out some cons in this fight where you should be aware of. This fight is up a weight class, so as much as that's a pro for Lupita because she won't be cutting that massive amount of weight again, she's also going to be fairly undersized. Her opponent is going to have a reach advantage over her by 7 inches. And so these are a little bit things to take into consideration. But that being said, Luana isn't very good at using her reach advantage. She has a reach advantage over a lot of her opponents. And a lot of times her opponents can just get in on her. But for me, the lines just got released, and unfortunately, it was one of these things where I thought there'd be able to be a boat I'd be able to jump on, but there really isn't. So far, there's only one line that's been out right now, but Lupita Godinez is already placed at a minus 285 favorite, where it's just, for me, this fight isn't worth the betting on it. We'll have to see what props they actually give us. A lot of the times with these last-minute fights, you don't really get a complete set of props, at least not on Bet365, which is the app that I choose to use. I would look at maybe the over 1.5, but it's just, to me, this is one of these fights where there's a lot of variables coming into play, and it's kind of a beer and popcorn type of fight for me. I like what I see out of both girls. I definitely think Lupita is the better fighter, though. It's just, once again, with the weights, she fought a week ago, even though, it's not like she took any real damage in that fight. But, whenever you're looking at a 10-fight plus card, you take the opportunities you can get. And certain fights you stay away from. And for me personally, this is just one of those fights where I think it's better to stay away from. Moving on. In the next fight, we have Ramazan Imov versus Danny Roberts. I'm going to first say, I do not like Danny Roberts. Not because he's not a good fighter. Not because he doesn't come and do good things. Not because he's got a shitty personality. I just don't like the fact that I cannot count on him. I think Danny Roberts has fantastic striking. But every single time I choose to bet on Danny Roberts, he finds a way to lose that fight. So, now that being said, he's also going up against Ramanov Adiv, where I have to admit this guy is probably one of the most boring fighters to watch. He likes to just push his opponents against the cage. He's not very good at landing takedowns. He's definitely a position over submission guy. And a lot of the times, I feel like his opponents can steal rounds from him just by landing a couple of punches, because as much as he pushes guys against the fence and has a crazy amount of control time in most of his fights, he doesn't actually land a lot. And it's kind of worrisome for me, because you have to look at what the opponent's going to see, Like, I spent a fair bit of time doing some tape on this fight. The line on Ramazan is fairly wide open. It's almost a little bit too risky in my book. If you're going to bet on Ramazan, I like the decision prop, to be honest. It's one of these things where you're going to have to try and find value in the fight, because at minus 300, it's not worth it against a guy who hasn't fought elite level competition. And Danny Roberts is far the better striker. If he can land his kicks, land his punches, stay at range, then Ramazan's going to be in a fair bit of trouble in this fight. It also worries me a little bit on Ramazan's gas tank, because if he can't make Danny Roberts actually work, and he just rides out a 10-minute kind of boring fest, Danny Roberts can come back in the third and win the fight. So if you're pretty confident in the Ramazan point, you're looking at plus 110 on the decision prop. That's where I go with it. I really don't see a world where he finishes Danny Roberts. He hasn't finished most of his fights. I know that Danny Roberts is finished with a flying knee. You're not going to get that out of Ramazan. It's going to be a clinch heavy fight. It's going to be little uppercuts, little knees to the thighs, and Ramazan trying to get this fight to the ground. One thing I do want to point out on this, and this is where I talk about, you'll hear me express this a lot. I like to sprinkle on things that I see value in. Round 3 finish from Danny Roberts is a plus 2,800. If you're throwing that in, say you take 3 of your biggest picks that are high favorites, and you throw that in and you throw a fiver on that, you're adding a tremendous amount of value. And then, keep your straight parlays in line. But these are where I see value, because these are the types of props that are going to hit every now and again. It's not likely it's going to hit, but there is a world where Ramazan's tired and Danny Roberts comes out and finishes him in the third round. So for me, though, I got Ramazan by decision. I think it's going to be an ugly, boring 15 minutes. And yeah, that's where I'm at on this one. Ramazan, but as I said, take the decision prop, because with Ramazan, I said, you're at minus 300. Go to the decision prop, you're at a plus 110. So you're taking pretty much a 3-1 favorite and turning them into a plus money. So just keep these things in mind. All right, let's move on to the next one. In the next fight, we have Andrew Sanchez versus Bruno Silva. Sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself there. In this fight, there's something I like to say, and that's called bet the violence. And that is where I think this fight is. I like Andrew Sanchez. I think he's a great fighter. He's just not reliable. And it makes it very, very difficult to bet on. The guy has a 12-6 record. He's very, very inconsistent. Like even with his fight against Marc-Andre Barrios, like I expected a lot more out of him in that fight, and he just didn't get it. He has a decision loss to Marvin Vettori. Can't knock him for that. Marvin Vettori, fought for a title not that long ago. He beat William Turnerman, who I don't really understand why he's in the UFC. I faded him against Albie. I thought it'd be Albie's first win in God knows how long. Fortunately, that didn't happen. But for me, the faster William Turner is out of the UFC, the better. And no love for that man. Either way, moving on. And then he lost to Makarov by a flying knee. And now he's going up against a guy in Bruno Silva, who is 20-6, who likes to throw bombs. Ironically enough, he just KO'd William Turner as well. And if you look at his last if you look at his last 5 fights, he's KOing everybody he touches. And that's kind of how I see this fight going. Andrew Sanchez doesn't have the cleanest striking. I believe he's got a karate or taekwondo background, but I find he has a very low fight IQ. He's not very good at implementing a game plan that makes sense, in my opinion. Sometimes he's striking, sometimes he's grappling, but he's just he seems to be all over the place. Now, with Bruno Silva, we know what he wants to do. He wants to come in there, throw punches, and get you out of there as quickly as possible. His last 5 fights have finished within the first round. So we all know what his game plan is going to be. And for him, it doesn't matter because if he gets you on the ground, he's going to be smashing your face. If it's standing up, he's going to be smashing your face. And I just don't see Andrew Sanchez being able to deal with that pressure there. So for this one, I'm going to go with Bruno Silva by KO. Move on to the next one. And the next fight of the night, sorry about this, we have Julian Marquez versus Jordan Wright. Now, this is where I'm going to be taking my second dog of the night. I'll admit it's not my favorite spot on the card, but with Julian Marquez, it's just, I can't find what this guy does well. He doesn't have great wrestling, doesn't have great striking, he doesn't have a good submission game, but he just finds ways to win fights. And it just comes down to the fact that the guy is gritty and durable, and the guy can take a punch. It doesn't matter what you hit him with. He will not go away. He recently beat Sam Alvey, which once again, Sam Alvey hasn't won a fight in 6 fights, but yet somehow got another fight coming up against Ian Heinisch, I believe. Don't ask me how that is happening. But Julian Marquez is going up against Jordan Wright. Now, I just point out that Julian Marquez does nothing well, but still wins fights. With Jordan Wright, this dude's striking is elite. My problem with him is he doesn't throw volume, and he likes to block punches with his face. And if you're fighting high-level MMA, blocking punches with your face is not a good idea, especially considering he's already been chin-checked. He was KO'd by Joaquin Buckley twice. The fact this guy got back to a stool blows my mind. If you look at that fight, he was KO'd at 18 seconds in the second round, where he shouldn't have even been allowed back out. I don't know how he got back to a stool. Then he beat Jimmy Pickett, where Jimmy Pickett just decided, I'm going to push for this takedown. And he just kept trying, and he got hit with that knee. And that was it. That's all she wrote. One thing that I should point out as well is he has a no contest to Anthony Hernandez. He lost that fight. Okay, let's just be 100%. Anthony Hernandez KO'd him in that fight. He popped for smoking dope, whatever. If Anthony Hernandez wasn't smoking weed, he still would have knocked the shit out of him in that fight. The way it goes, okay? But in this fight, I'm gonna have to go with Wright. At plus money, 2 guys who are gonna come in there and throw bombs, I'm gonna have to take the elite striker. Now, if Julian Marquez comes in, shoots for the legs, I will be a little bit more surprised. In the next fight, we have Marion Theon versus Mariano Bano Silva. Now, a lot of people are calling Marion the lock of the night, and there's a good reason for that. This girl's striking is next level. Now, if Bueno Silva, there's one thing that really annoys me about this fight is that whenever Bueno Silva fought Felicia Spencer, I thought we'd finally be able to see what this girl. Oh, the next fight we have Mariana Silva. Or unless there's something that I'm drastically missing, and I think you can tell by the line there probably isn't. Silva is probably going to lose this fight. I think Fiona is going to not necessarily be the future of the division, but she's definitely a force to be reckoned with. If you look at her topology picture, it is downright scary. Like this woman comes to bang, and you know you can bet her straight up. I think there's great value in that. Like to me, she's a good parlay piece because I don't necessarily know if she's going to finish this fight, but you know, it definitely is possible. So I don't see a good angle for a prop bet on this. Like the TKO is only plus 162, so you're not really getting a crazy value. The decision is plus 187, so fairly close lines. If you're really on the Silva hype train, bet the submission prop at plus 400. I don't foresee it happening, but you do never know. The over-unders, the 1.5 is at minus 250. The 2.5 is at minus 138. I don't see like going through all these props. I don't see very much value. If you're smart, you use them. Perion as a parlay piece, and that's where you go from there. There's just too many variables about how this fight's going to go. As I said, if you're going to go for a prop bet, you're going to go for the dog, and I don't really see the dog winning this fight. So let's get into the next one. Going on the next fight here, sorry. We have Jim Miller versus Eric Gonzalez. Now, Eric Gonzalez is making his UFC debut. And the one thing that stood out to me when watching this guy is that this guy has terrible takedown defense. He's getting taken down by guys on the regional scene and not looking very good at it all. Getting taken down by Will. Now, on the other hand, Jim Miller's like 38. This is like his 30th UFC fight, and he kind of slows down after the first fight, or after the first round. Sorry. For this fight, I definitely say bet the violence because if Jim Miller wins this fight, it's going to be in the first round, and if he loses this fight, it's going to be in the later rounds. The line right now for Jim Miller by submission is a plus 220. I think that's your bet. If you think that he's going to gas out, then bet the plus 500 on Eric. And if you're that worried about it, bet the fight doesn't go the distance at plus 120. Because I do not see this fight going the distance. It's either Jim Miller's going to get the submission early, or Eric Gonzalez is going to weather the storm. Jim Miller's going to gas because he's 40 years old, and he's going to get TKO'd later in that fight. I'm kind of surprised you're still getting plus money on it. I don't think Jim Miller's gone to a decision in quite some time. I'm going to confirm that before I keep this one going. But yeah, like it doesn't make sense to me that the plus money's still there. So you should jump on it. Oh, I am wrong. He lost just less by decision and Vince Patel. So I can understand the line a little bit more there. So just to backpedal on that, I wasn't actually aware of Jim Miller's last two fights going the decision, but I still stand by what I said. Bet the violence on this fight. I think that's how this one ends. And honestly, the Jim Miller first round right now, that's sitting at plus 550 is super tempting. You could 100% expect the fact that I'm going to get a little bit of a sprinkle on that one because odds are Eric's going to get taken down and subbed right away. I don't think the guy's a UFC caliber fighter. I'm kind of surprised this fight's even this high up on this card, to be honest. So for me, I bet Jim Miller by submission. Going on to what I believe is the co-main event of the evening, we have Andre Arlovski versus Carlos Felipe. I do not like Carlos Felipe. A heavyweight fighter that can't get a knockout to me is something to be questioned. I think he's lazy. I think he can make 205, and I think he just chooses not to. Um, I don't got much love for the guy. But on the other foot, you have an Andrei Arlovski who has been fighting in the UFC since as a kid. So it's kind of hard to put a lot of value on this fight. I've said since the beginning, I had a little pre-fight show earlier this week where I stated my opinion on this fight. I think betting the distance is honestly your best bet in this fight. It's going to be close. I personally believe Andrei Arlovski is going to edge it, but this is one of those fights where I can see this thing just going to a decision, and whoever you put money on, the value is going to go in the other direction. The judges are here to screw you on this fight. I don't see anybody really getting a KO. Andrei Arlovski, I don't believe, has been KO'd since Tim Aspinall, or not KO'd, sorry, finished since Tim Aspinall, which he won that fight by sub, or Tom Aspinall. And then he went out and beat Chase Sherman. So, he's 3-5 in his last 5 fights. He beat Chase Sherman, Tanner Boser, Bill Billings. And to be honest, if Chase Sherman and Tanner Boser haven't knocked him out, I don't think Carlos Felipe's. Carlos Felipe's last finish was, how long ago was this? Was in 2017 to a guy that was 2-0. So bet the decision on this fight. Right now, the decision for this fight is sitting at around, what do we have here? Sorry. The decision for this fight is at minus 163. I think that covers both of your bases, and I think that's the right thing to go. You could bet either side decision, but I feel like it's going to be a super close fight. And in my opinion, Andrei Arlovski is going to take this one. But if you disagree, then do what you got to do. But I got no love for Carlos Felipe at all. So I will fade this guy every single chance I get. And actually, now that I'm looking at this line, Carlos Felipe is now the favorite. Whenever I was looking at this earlier while I was doing my tape study for this, Andrei Arlovski was the dog. Or was at even money. It was a pick 'em. But now the line shifted a little bit. So I'm going to wait to bet on this one. Because if Andrei Arlovski gets up to a plus 150, I'll take a shot on that all day. All day. All right, let's move into the last fight of the evening. We have Aspen Ladd versus excuse me. Sorry, we have Aspen Ladd versus Norma Dumont. Now, I don't really understand why Aspen Ladd's the favorite in the fight. I think Norma Dumont has a far better striking, and Aspen Ladd, she doesn't have that great of takedowns, and that's where she'll win this fight. And with Norma Dumont, I think she's a big up-and-coming fighter. This fight's at a different weight class where it favors her a lot more. She recently fought Felicia Spencer, where I really thought we'd finally get to see how her takedown was. And Felicia Spencer decided to not go for takedowns whenever her best path for victories was shoot for takedowns. So I don't really know. Felicia Spencer should fire her corner after that fight. I know there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, Felicia Spencer got to the ground in the last fight or in the last round and completely dominated her for the last minute or two." No, she didn't. She did not. You gotta watch that fight. Dumont went for a trip and landed on the ground. So Felicia Spencer landed 0 takedowns in that fight. So it's kind of just a tough spot. In this case, I do have to go with the dog, though. I don't see Aspen Ladd getting this fight to the ground, and I think Dumont's just a much better striker. There's also so many variables with Aspen Ladd, like this fight's at a different weight class. She just had a terrible weight cut a couple weeks ago where she was shaking on the ground or on the scale. Sorry, it wasn't really a good scene. So for me, I have to go with Dumont in this fight. I think it's a safer bet, and at plus money, you can't go wrong. Right now, the lines are sitting at a plus 110 for Dumont, so the line has moved a fair bit. You can see with this card, people are kind of all over the place. There's been lots of line movement the whole time. But I like Norma Dumont in this spot. I just think that she's a more complete fighter, and I don't really see Aspen Ladd getting this fight to the ground. And if it stays on the feet, it's going to be Dumont all day. So let's just go through a quick recap of what we have here. And then I'm going to give out a couple of parlay pieces that I like, because in my opinion, where you got two big fight cards this weekend, I think if you want to make the best bang for your buck, you're going to switch it up a little bit. You're going to mix a little bit of Bellator with a little bit of UFC. You know, there's guys that are not locks because it's MMA, and to me, there's no such thing as a lock. But you got people on both ends where I think you can make some value and make a pretty nice profit. So let's just go with this though quickly in a quick rundown. Just for straight picks, I'm going with Norma Dumont. For the co-main event, I'm going with Andre Arlovsky. And the next fight, I'm going with Tim Miller over Eric Gonzalez, Manon Fion to win against Bueno Silva. I'm going with the dog in Jordan Wright to beat Julian Marquez. I'm sticking with the favor with Bruno Silva to beat Andrew Sanchez. Sorry, but as I said, bet the violence on that one. I'm going with Ramazan Emeev to beat Danny Roberts. But I said sprinkle that third round, plus 2,200 or whatever I said it is. Sprinkle that third round, Danny Roberts. Throw it in something. You know? Not a big value, but you're going to increase the hell out of your parlay for something that I think may happen. I'm going with Lupita Gomez versus Luana Carolina. But as I said, this is a stay away fight. There's lots of variables going into this one. You really just stay away. Grab a beer. You know, we got 10 fights on this card. You know? Let's pick the ones that make sense. I'm going with Ludovic Klein to kill Nate Landwehr, and I'm hoping I do not eat my words on this one. I'm going with Brandon Davis at dog money to beat Diana Bargatella. I feel bad for this guy. Hopefully he doesn't find this video because I have butchered his name left and right. And finally, I'm going with Ariana Canellosi to beat Estelle Nunez. My most confident parlay of the night is going to be Ludovic Klein, Ramazan Emeev, Marion Fion, and fight goes the distance with Andre Arlovsky and Carlos Felipe. My secondary parlay for the night is going to be Ramazan Emeev and Norma Dumont to get, and Ludovic Klein to get a little bit plus money there. One thing you should know though is you shouldn't parlay up the same guys a bunch, because as we all know, you know, you can have a 5-person parlay, which you think is a lock, and it's MMA. All it takes is one good shot and your parlay is toast. So now to clarify some things, as I said, we have some other events coming up this weekend. So I'm really thinking if you take Ramazan Emeev and Ludovic Klein, as I said, goes against everything I just said, because I'm telling you to put them in another parlay, and you put them with Vladimir Nekov and Corey Anderson, you got yourself a good parlay right there. You know, there's a couple other ones that are good. So once again, I know, and you know what? I know Jordan Wright, I'm high up on this guy. A lot of people pick Marquez. So if you listen to other guys and they say this guy's a lock, you know, do exactly what I'm doing now. Find your 2 favorite fighters and mix them in with the fights that make the most sense, you know? If you mix 2 of your favorite fighters in with Jalen Bates and Lance Gibson Jr. on the Bellator card, boom, you got yourself, you're taking 2 massive favorites, mix them in, you got yourself a 4-person parlay, you're sitting at plus money. For the Bellator card, I really highly suggest do not touch the Benson Henderson prop. I know a lot of people looking at Benson Henderson like, oh, a UFC caliber fighter. Benson Henderson hasn't looked good in years, so stay away from that. So that's going to come to a conclusion here. I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to this. As I said, I went through my bets. I'm going to post them in the link below. There will be a podcast on Spotify that's going to reflect this with more of a breakdown point from my buddy Calum and I. So I look forward to hearing what everybody thinks of the video. This is very new. It's going to be the first video that's going up on YouTube. I know the quality of this video is going to be a little chalky and a little sloppy, but over time, these things will get better. My picks generally make money. They put money in my account. So, and as I said, I just want to give people angles to look at. You know, things where you can make some money, things where you can find spots, angles, spend a lot of time watching tape, spend a lot of time watching videos and trying to figure out just, and I listen to a lot of other people too. I listen to a lot of people and get their angles and what they want and what they see, things that I may not see as well. So once again, fellow MMA breakdowns, I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video, and cheers to the next one.